Mic check. Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Got one name I gotta add to the title that I missed. Got a big title today, guys. Big title. We're throwing some liquidity out there today. Got a couple profit takes that we've had that we gotta go over, but more buying than selling. Getting a couple things set up, and then we'll get into it. Okay, so we got ARM as the first name. If you guys were in with the live stream yesterday, we took it off the open. We actually had an ad off of 58. Why'd we add off 58? We were getting ready. We had no profit takes on the move up. We were looking for more continuation, and we played this 618 retracement for a third add to the name, and our best print on the name was a 6602. We started at 60, right in front of 63s, which is the trend line. Still holding the piece and looking for some continuation. BDRX, I do got to keep an eye on this. I got it alerted. We took a 50 fill and we're on the bid off at 35, so I just got it alerted off of that. But a nice volume take. We had it alerted yesterday above this high. It made a move early. We think if it gets over 675 that it is going to give us a push higher. Baba, we have an order. We bought 87.59s yesterday. We have an order right off at 87 flat. If that wants to trigger, we're going to add some. Rivian, we had a sell off of 24.50 right off the open, and we will look to reload bottom end of the channel. Might think about those 23.50s. Would have to get a little bit below that low, so I don't know. Probably looking to play the trend line there. SoFi could have had some profit takes yesterday, but honestly, if it comes back into this gap, we might think about it. But I'm looking for bottom end of the channel for more trim. So that is the SoFi. Off of that, PAGS. It's been a while since we've talked about PAGS. We have a Ripley stop. One sec. My bad. Sorry about the dog. We're looking at this as a neckline break for PAGS. Confirmed a higher low and now flirting with that neckline. So we had two ads actually. We took a market fill off of 40s. I'll be right back. Somebody's at my house. Maybe somebody's just outside of my house. Losing my train of thought. Frickin' dog. Gosh darn dog. Chewy, we actually have orders out for Chewy off of 2050. Now I'm going to show you why. Now bear with me. I know it's been a knife, but we're playing this sort of wick low right here, and we're going to see VKTX. This is a new, we did get a fill on this name today. Started our position. We like the increasing volume and the channel break, and we just got that fill off of 25. So VKTX is a new name, and I'm actually going to go throw an order off of 1515 right now and see if that can give us a little bit more side. VKTX, we're going to go right off of 1515. We're going to try it. Had this name on watch the other day. BDRX still kind of trading sided, but you can see the wick pressure into these 40s. If this can give us a fill off of 35s, we're going to try and add to it. So let's add BDRX up here. Let's go to VKTX. Let's go ahead and add this name up here. We can take Soundtown off. What other new names do we have in there? Chewy, which is I should put an alert for those 50s and just see if that triggers. We're gonna see if those See if that can give us an order. Man, I can't even keep track of everything. GM's a title name. We've talked about 34 break, decisive 34 break. Looking at the daily chart, strong candle. We're looking for a move up into those middle 30s. Disney was, we actually had an ad on Disney yesterday. I'll go show you exactly where we took the ad. We were looking at this sort of flat top at 84s right here. We took the fill off at 84.02, and we had an order off of 75s that didn't trigger. We took it off as it was pushing, and had I left it on, man, it would have been a beautiful, just a beautiful fill. Geo, we've talked about 750s many times on Geo. Uh, I mean, we're over 750, and I think this is setting up the close where it closed right there, and now it's trying to push. So if this wants to get a decisive move over this flat top, we think that this one could be a mover for us today. Alibaba, you know, we could have had some orders off of that, but we felt 87. If it would have got down there, we would have added more to the position. We're okay with that. Rivian coming back in. What other names do we have? We have ATHM. Let's go take a look at ATHM. Still trading in the wedge pattern. If this comes down anywhere near 29s, we're probably going to add some more. What other names we got on there? MSOS. We had two pre-market fills on the name. We talked about it up to this. All we did, this is super simple. All we did is we mapped this out. So before, we had the move as in, uh, no, that doesn't make sense. Oh yes, yes, of course, of course. Sorry guys, my mind is everywhere right now. All we did is mapped out this gap up right here. All we did was try to map this out with our 618. So right here, we weren't convinced that this gap was meeting up anywhere. So all we did was move this up until that last retracement meets up with that gap. And that was pretty much right to that 10. So we had 97s marked. Boom, gap fill and a gap fill and support. So multiple points of contact. We felt at 10. So when we seen it in the pre-market over 10, we took a fill, and we also took a fill leading up to 10. So our first fill actually came in, I believe it was 76. So it's sitting at 75s trying to hold, and we got a 76 fill, and we also took a fill over 10 in the pre-market. So we took some profits where we said that we were going to. Looking at it, I still don't think the move is over. It's gonna just taking out the highs. We're looking for 1080 to 1150 for more outs on the name. But that is the title. I mean, we got a big title here, so I mean, if you got a name that you want to take a look at, by all means, you're gonna have to say something, because I don't even know how I'm gonna keep up with everything, yet alone. Uh, and VKTX giving us a fill off of this 1550. We feel that this is reasonable. Looking at the daily chart, you can see we have some support that we're going into. Is this trend line going to be able to hold is going to be the big question. So we think we're buying a trend line, and also buying a name with a strong name. If this starts to build this sort of U shape, we feel we have early entries for a potential flat top where we can have outs up into this. Jets ETF is getting closer, but 1750 Jets will be on the title. FVRR, we're looking for a 30 break. 30 break is going to put this name on the title. Geo, BDRX gave us a fill right here. Let's go take a look, because I'm not sure if I wanted to get filled. But we do have our second order coming on in. Let's re-alert this on a 29, and let's go put one more order out there. BDRX, we only have 2 lots on 30s. So let's try and add a little bit more off of 630. We're going to give it a chance. It has the decreasing volume, but the wick tops are a little scary. So if this needs to pull into 25s maybe, and maybe we can, let's go ahead and adjust that order actually and make those 28s. I like 28s. I'll save us 2 pennies. If we miss that fill, we're not going to be too upset with it. But other than that, yeah, that's what we got for today. So a lot of names. VKTX could be added to the title. I could go do that. I do think Lumen over this 150 is an interesting type of setup. Able to fight over top of those 150s is big. That's your previous low. It rejected it yesterday. Now catching a little bit of a bid. BDRX, let's tune back over here because this is more of our risky trade for today, and rightfully so. Uh, but VKTX catching a little bit of a bid. Let's adjust this back. Looking at the names, I think we're set up, ready to go. Uh, so let's kind of sit back a little bit and see just what else is going on. I the fills that we have already leading up to the morning is pretty nice. I would say PAGS into the 25s. We're gonna add another order for PAGS onto these 925s. We're just gonna add a little bit of size, nothing crazy. 925s. We like this little neckline break that PAGS has. We were patient. We wanted to buy 9 flats so long into here. So maybe if we get a test down into here, maybe we can put an indecision and then continuation. I like the strength on the name as well. Rig is also a notable name testing this flat top up here. We said over 880 could catch a bid. Well, we're over 880, so that one is one to keep on watch as well. VKTX coming all the ways back into 15s. I'd say my clear out on this name is going to be a 1490, but that's kind of into support. So let's Chewy crossing over 50. So we got a fill on Chewy as well. We're going to alert VKTX. Let's alert VKTX off of. Ooh, this is right into it. So let's get one last order on VKTX. We have 2 fills on the name, but let's try this and go from there. And we're gonna put an out on the name. We'll just watch this one. VKTX, red engulfing right through the level. Let's go ahead and just put an out for the name. Where would I want this out to be? VKTX might end up just flushing on us, so let's go ahead and get this stop loss in and go 1480. If we get stopped out of some of these aren't going to work, but some of them might. It's really not too bad of risk reward. And we don't have ARM on the watch, so we're going to keep watching this. Right into the gap fill, trading back in this channel. I really like this 60. 60 to 62. That's 61, but 60 to 62. I'd say right in that window, we're going to look at it as something. BDRX. VKTX trying to wick into this trend line. Is it going to be able to get anything though? I didn't expect this red candle to come in, so might need to be a little careful with that one. Lumen's still catching a bid. Let's go take a look at that Chewy. This Chewy did give us a fill. Trying to hold 50s. Let's re-alert this. So that wicking into 50s for now. Doesn't mean that it's in the clear. But brand new position. We'll see how it goes. Invax, notable around this area. Is it going to retrace back down, give us a secondary low off of this level? We're going to find out. Yeah, I'm losing track. I just having a hard time even thinking right now. But BDRX, let's keep our eyes on this one because it is wicking into the level. We got 3 minutes left. Second candle is decreasing. What are their names? PAGS. Did we add PAGS up into here? Let's go down and find PAGS and move this up to here. BDRX giving us a fill. BDRX right into these 25s. We'll see. I'd say underneath of the gap, so probably a 610. It's possible my headset just gave out right there. Did it? Did my headset give out right there? BDRX. We're just gonna go put that stop. Do we want to give it 6s though? let's see if it can wick. We have a little bit of time to wick into this level. Let's see if we can start getting some wicks into this level. SoFi reclaimed 9s. Rivian underneath the 24s. We're looking to reload that. 2350s maybe down into the trend line. BKTX is going to stop us out. I think it just stopped us out right there at those 80s. So rightfully so, brand new position. We bought the consolidation off of 25s, and then we averaged in off of 15s, and then we averaged in off of 94s. So out, just a quick trade. We felt the risk reward was decent, had a decent uptrend. We thought it was breaking a downtrend. Obviously, it wasn't breaking a downtrend good enough. Chewy, beautiful fill off of Chewy. We'll see how that ends up going. We'll see if I'm saying that after starting the position. That's kind of a different style of trade than I'm used to. But we'll give it a go. We'll try and buy the knife on Chewy. But it is bringing in free cash flow, so that's kind of music to my ears. Company getting beat down, that brings in free cash flow. DAL, a nice neckline break on a 15. You look at the daily chart, still probably needs a little bit of time. Hovering right in, we talked about this level pulling back in, but oil underneath at 90s, maybe that's part of the reason. Geo still holding over 50s. Baba still over 50s. BAC I think is probably reasonable, but we're gonna be patient. Wait for 2850s. Devon giving out the lows. I'd say your last retracement meeting in these upper 49s down here near this 4950. I think Devon is gonna be another title name that we have. BDRX is going to be worth a watch, but nice buying pressure off of the level, so getting a nice fill on BDRX off of that original flat top. If this can break over 675s, you can see the catalyst for this to sort of break out. One, it's a strong name. Two, confirming that higher low. Three, has a beautiful neckline off of this 675, and I'd say you have a clear flat top, just marking all these wicks up to 70s. Looks pretty good. VKTX continuing downside pressure, so you know, we thought we had the right idea with that one, but you know, maybe we didn't. MSOS, you know, still showing rejection. You know, maybe if this pulls back in the 9, we'll just reload what we cut today. But I like this BDRX setup right here, and the bid is stacked on 40s, so that's a good sign. I like when these easily get spready, but you do have, it does pass the rules. It has decreasing volume, and you have a wick of buying pressure, so I do think this is a reasonable setup. Let's see if I can get back over 650s though. So not out of the woods yet by any means. But other than that, feel free to throw anything in the chat. I mean, we're kind of just sitting still for a while. We're not really doing much until BDRX really makes a decision on what it wants to do. I do think Disney is probably should have been a title name. I think getting over 85s is pretty big. But a nice hold of 80s. If you just scroll to the left, you can see wicks, wicks, wicks. Is it going to be able to break this sort of downtrend that it's in, which the downtrend is kind of wedging, so that's the one catalyst I'd say it has going for it. I'd say this is probably a false break of that, holding the support and getting back over that. So still trading inside the wedge, I wouldn't say. Let's look back at ARM. ARM down to 62, so this is what we like to see right here. Start trading back in this channel. We're going to be very interested in ARM over here in this area. Looking at the NASDAQ though, I do think it is notable to say this. Now, I did clear out my NASDAQ, and maybe I only have it on the NQ. Do I have it on the NQ? Let's look at the NQ. Yep, this is a beautiful look of a great picture for the NASDAQ. You have a retracement. It rejects the 702, and now potentially, now you guys always hear me say, "Oh, that's not a double top. Oh, that's not a double top." It could be the best, like picture perfect looking double top, and I'll sit there and call it and say it's not a double top. When I see these happen right at near your final retracement in this type of window right here, this instantly has. Do I need to go back to CSKS or whatever? I forget the ticker. But instantly when I see this, I think if this trend line cracks, I have no faith in this support. It might catch a little bit of a bounce, but I have no faith in it. And I would expect a crackdown. You have a gap a little bit lower that could catch a small bid, but I'd expect a wave pattern to transpire that gives you a test back to this flat top. So if the NASDAQ, I would be very careful trading tech names, in my humble opinion, if this starts to transpire. Now, if we hold this and sort of break over top of that, where you have the rundown, you set the flat top, you trade down a little bit, and then you break that flat top, in my trading experience, as soon as you break that flat top that's set right here, boom, that's where you can potentially get some extensions. In this first extension, meeting up near the all-time high right there. So I could be looking for that as a bull catalyst, but a bear catalyst is definitely drawing up as you're rejecting this last retracement. So is it a bad idea that we've taken this many fills on a lot of different names when the NASDAQ is setting up bearish? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm a maniac. Uh, but we'll see. I do like some of the setups that we're getting. PAGS, we're just trying to play this little neckline right there. BDRX, you can see the higher low confirmations, strong name. If it can get over top of 75s, I really like the potential for this to maybe catch a bid, test the flat top where we can have some easy outs. If we're lucky, we can get a push higher. You can see the wicks have not been able to get up to this gap fill where I would have clear outs there. But I'd say your dream move is this 1550, which is a flat bottom break. I don't know how else you draw up a flat bottom break other than this. Boom. Couple days of consolidation. Boom. Now we're trying to build this sort of trend line. So if this wants to go today, we have a winner. We're pretty convinced. But if it needs to retrace back down, you have a gap down here, you have a gap down here, and you have your trend line for protection. So maybe 550 is where you want to start this. But BDRX is starting to put in that green candle, testing the body highs right here. So decent start. This is still only candle number 3, so I'm not going to make it sound like it's ready to go. But I mean, 650 is our first fill on this opening candle. We got 35s that filled, and we also have 28s that filled. You know, we could have had that order off the 25s, but I mean, what do you do? Looking elsewhere, Baba's still holding these 87.50s. It's a little sad to be 19 pennies off from that 87 order, but we did get 59s filled yesterday. I think risk to reward off of this, you look at your daily chart, and you have a true catalyst for a potential trend line hold. Strength isn't there on your daily, but on a weekly chart, you can see hovering around that middle ground. This is where we think the big players are at. We also have a catalyst for a channel top meeting up with that. And looking at our downtrend, I'd say it's convincingly through this sort of downtrend, no matter how you set it. I set it like this. I look at this as sort of a retest because that's where the support actually holds. So if this is a downtrend break and now we're building this bigger U-shaped formation that's long developing, I think the risk to reward is definitely there. And I'm not going to be executing the out, but if I was putting a stop loss, I would run a deep stop, probably underneath of this 86.50. I know the wick low, that is decisively below the wick low, but I would say that is where I'd execute my stop on the name. Oh, BDRX, wait a minute, 670. Let's go tune in the BDRX. We might have one right here. Volume actually upticked pretty decent there, a nice green candle, and here we're getting ready for this breakout. We have all right size here. We have 3 fills on the name. Maybe we can think about an out into these 75s right here. So let's go ahead and the bid stacked off 66. Let's see if we can get, we'll just start with a 1/15th trim and see if we can, yes sir, right through those 75s. The bid hasn't jumped up though. So that is definitely alarming, but we're going to try and get an 80 fill right here. Let's throw that order off and see if we can get this fill. Open order right now. Didn't give us a fill. We should have been a little bit more prepared. I was just trying to, uh, share some information. I mean, we have freaking 10 title names today. Jesus. What do I get myself into? But let's see if we can get these 80 fills. We'll go on the tape there and see if we didn't get that fill, but that's all right. We do think that the setup is there. You can see the volume picking up. Now, when you're dealing with breakouts on a bull flag, if you're looking at this as a 1-2, and now you're getting your sort of breakout candles trying to develop, right? The volume is always going to be your tell. If your volume is getting closer to that initial pull of your bull flag, a lot of times it puts it on the map for people. So we have 6 minutes left. If this volume can exceed 7.7K, which is more than reasonable, we're already at 5K, then you could be getting some breakout traders to come in. So but if this wicks down in, I still think that there is hope. You have good support off these 30s, and I'm going to stay true to my out. We're probably going to run a 6 or maybe a 610 out. If we end up getting stopped out with no trims after it gave us this move, I mean, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. But we'll see. Trying to pop around. I'll put an alert underneath of 34s. And if that alerts, we'll just maybe just come back to it and see if uh, it's getting too volatile to the downside. PAGS, we have an order off of 25s. 25s didn't fill. Let's look back over at CHWY. CHWY holding those 50s, so pretty decent fill for a new position. GEO, stair stepping, has that S formation, nice candle, and now retesting those 750s. Nice buying pressure off of 750s. GM decisively through 34s. The catalyst for GM, I just think that early entries, I mean, we missed orders off 32 flat twice. The low here, 32.02. The low here, 32.05. So it would be nice to say we got 32s, but now decisively through these 34s, your strength is getting very close. I like the setup. SoFi still trading in the channel. So I think this is going to be something that is getting close to the profit takes off 925s. So we'll see if that can continue to catch a bid to the upside. Rivian still trading inside of the channel. We did have a 2450 fill. Disrespected top end of these wicks. We already trimmed over here and reloaded over here. So getting another fill, if it pulls back into the bottom end of the channel, we are going to continue reloading the name. BDRX, do we want to market out of anything? Do we want to market out anything here? BDRX, no size on the bid, no size on the ask. We have 4 minutes left for this breakout candle to kind of transpire. But now that we see the volume is exceeded up here, if this volume candle turns red, which means that this candle would turn red, that would be a little bit concerning for me. We do have 20 lots off of 50s here, so we'll see if this order size can kind of hold this up, and maybe we just move that alert up to 42s. If this candle does turn red, we're going to come back and maybe we can think about an exit of the entire position if that transpires. But hopefully this is just a washout top, and now if it can reclaim that, we can get something to get going. Just took out 12 of those orders off of 50, so I'm getting a little bit nervous with this one actually. Looking at ATHM, we're really just looking for a 31 break. We have it marked right here. If this gets over 31s, it's decisively through this wedge. So that's what we're looking for there. VKTX, probably going to go test up bottom end of the trend line. We'll see how that ends up going. Let's take a look back at ARM. ARM trading back inside the channel. We're still holding a piece of this. We were on the ask at 70s, just never got the fill. So that's too bad. But if this does pull back into here, we are going to be playing ARM. I mean, what else do we have on the title? I kind of forget. MSOS, I mean, beautiful pre-market fills on MSRS. But if this pulls back into that 9 flat area, we can think about getting an add. That also was a flat top break, so anywhere near these 925s and 9, we can think about reloads on the name. What else we got? What else we got? You guys got anything you want me to take a look at? I'd say now is the time. We're waiting for BDRX. Let's see what this. Man, that washout top is scary. We should have had a fill there. I can't believe I didn't just go over and just mark it out of a piece. But I mean, it is what it is. We can't take it back now. So let's see if this can catch a bid in this last 2 minutes. If it can leave a healthy green candle holding these 650s, I think it has a chance. If it takes out 680s, I'm going to be pretty convinced that this is going to maybe catch a bid, but that doesn't mean it's going to. But if it takes out 680s on this particular candle, the volume has already increased. I think you're going to have a lot of people sitting here ready to go. My humble opinion. We'll see. We'll see. So I'm not going to make it sound like it's a guarantee. You can see the selling pressure off of that top. If we go further into that selling pressure, maybe we got to go into a 1 minute. You can see, boom, boom, boom. Your highest volume sticks are red, and this green volume got no movement. This is just getting 650s triggered. But that is a 1 minute, so don't hold too much weight to it. Other than that, I mean, ARM did test this 62. I think it has some more room to fall back down. Let's see if we can get a true test of this. I think this is getting closer to be alerted. Let's alert 650s or 6150s. I don't even know if I have any alerts. I do. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. BDRX. This is the one that we want to watch. Let's see if we can get a break. Let's get a break. Let's get a break. Good morning, Rudy. What do you think of Shopify? Let me watch the end of this candle real quick. This candle's getting ready to close. Close at these 660s, please. Please close right here, and then give me a continuation candle. I'll go look at Shop here in a second, Edgar. Hold me to it. If I forget, then I will go. I'm not gonna forget. So now we have open of the next candle, opens flat. Even if it trades down, I want to see 650s hold. So we're going to move that alert up a little bit. This would alert me as soon as those 650 orders get cleared. So let's see. Looks like it's getting a little bit of a bid. Let's go take a look at Shop real quick. Looking at Shop. Shop on the daily, one, you have strength. So you get this gap up, and now you have a tight channel to the downside. This is actually a pretty good look, in my humble opinion. I like tight channels because when they break, they're going to break decisively. Break to the upside, I would have it alerted off of that 60. I would probably alert the bodies of the candle, so call it a 63.50. If it gets over 63.50, you're going to get ready to take that neckline break. Call it a 64 break. One, you're breaking your channel. Two, you want to see this price hold. So your risk to reward, I would have an out underneath of that. If it keeps stair stepping to the downside, I'd say your gap fill right off of 60 is where you could play it for the bottom end of the channel if it got there in like a couple days. The big indicator for Shop, that's a NASDAQ name. We go over to our NASDAQ. This is our picture for the NASDAQ. Anytime you start rejecting these last retracements right here, you have to have it in mind that there is a potential that you get this wave pattern set up where you start this sort of channel downward, where you see this is your bounce and then boom, break of the downward channel potentially. Maybe you catch a bid from here and it's just an ABC. But anytime I see those sort of rejections off of these areas, now it's not a bad thing either. If you trade down and you can hold, like you have a gap right here that can hold easily, which is probably meeting in right at your trend line. So if this catches a bid and then it takes off, so sells off, if I was looking at a 15-minute chart right here, you sell off, you retrace up, sets the flat top, trades down, and then takes out that flat top, boom, that's where you see nice, healthy green candles come into the market. In my experience, I'm not saying that's how it's going to happen, but if this trend line doesn't get any gap fill buying, maybe you catch a small bid, but then you reject 15.5, and then you crack this trend line. I don't know how much weight I would hold to this support. I don't think this would hold, in my opinion, where you trade down, you have a gap, and then also your previous low support. So this can also be skewed anywhere through this, but then I'd look for a retest of that low and a boom. So if the NASDAQ is setting up like this and this transpires, I would say your shop is going to be heavily inspired. And you can see that if this is a retracement, it retraces up to that same retracement as the NASDAQ. So I would say that is going to be your tell, in my humble opinion. Is it going to happen that way? I don't know. And obviously the time frame is hard to judge. But I will say that Shopify does have strength. You have nice volume on this move up. It's very possible that this probably has an uptrend as well, and I would say definitely an uptrend, and a reasonable channel. So if you're getting an early entry, your top end of the channel up to 82s, I'd say you actually have flat bottom break test that meets up right at 78. So you have a couple different catalysts that say yes, this could easily trade up back top end of the channel. So things I like about it, things I don't like about it. That's what I'd say. I think it's a reasonable name to keep your eye on. I love tight channels like this, especially off of gap ups that have strength. Tight channels like this, if you get a break to the upside, boom, you can really take advantage of this, where this 64 break could be an early catalyst. If this takes out 68s, you're going to see a boom. It might have to trade down and retest 68s again, but then I would expect it to be an early churn for top end of the channel, and that's how I'd look at it. Not a bad look. Not a bad look. BDRX, you can see that buying support coming off of 50s. The wick low of this is 51s. Let's go see what the tape is looking like right here, because this is one that I want to see break out. We got the ask at 68s. The top of the candle is 69s, 68s, call it. But dude, why does my headset keep beeping like that? Something's off. Something's off in my setup. I gotta get a clean refresh of everything. Rivian reclaiming 24s. So yeah, gap up. You hold the gap, gives up the gap, and now buyers are trying to push it up. Is this going to be something that can catch top end of the channel again? I would be a seller off of 2470s to 75s in front of 25s, but that's where I'd be pretty bullish for a potential break of this channel. Is this channel going to give me a break to the upside or a break to the downside? You see the daily chart. You have a nice move and then an ascending channel. I love taking these ascending channels because when they break, you have plenty of opportunities to take profits. So that when it breaks down, hopefully you've taken enough profits and then you can have a clear out. But when they break up, you've already taken your profits and you have some clear outs. If this is a retracement, you can see we have our clear outs 618, so that's top end of the channel. And if we break higher, we have our 702, 786, and then we're holding the rest for a break higher. Hopefully, if that break higher can come in. So I love these ascending channels. They give you plenty of opportunities to take profit and reload. And then if you break down, hopefully you've taken, like I said, hopefully you've taken enough profits where the loss isn't as big. But then you can also trade back into some levels. So is there an uptrend right here? I'd say if this is setting up for a wave pattern to the downside, it has a flat top that it can set up to. So if it does break down, you have some gaps down here that can get filled. Would it hold? Try the hold, give a small retest, and then trade down to this gap where you can see if we trade from right here, you can see potential signs of a descending channel for a retest back down into this. So it'll probably be a name that we do revisit off of this flat top and the gap if it goes against us. But we'll be greedy and patient in that when it transpires. Looking elsewhere, Baba, holding these 8750s. Yeah, anytime, Edgar. Anytime you have any tickers, I am more than willing to take time to go look at that. Anytime. And at the end of the day, you know that I'm just a guy. I'm just sharing my opinion. At the end of the day, I'm not a market mover. I don't have that type of liquidity to move anything. But I will say that if the NASDAQ does get going, uh, I do have shop right here on the watch. If this were to start catching a bid and testing this downtrend, I would think about having some alerts off a 6350 break and get ready for that neckline break higher. Uh, it's not a bad look. So if the Nasdaq really gets going, I think that this is a name that could follow with it. It has the setup for it. BDRX up to 72s. Wait a minute. Oh man, look at that green candle. Doesn't this candle just give you the feel like, boom, just leave a nice healthy green candle, push up to eights. That would be awesome. That would be great if we got that push to 8. I'd be very excited, but we're trying to get 15th trims. Nice green candle coming in, decisively holding those 50s is beautiful. We feel we got a decent entry on this name. Now let's go and look at the tape for this name. The bid's only at 60s, the ask is at 73s, so we'll see. It's not out of the woods yet until I see a decisive break of this sort of 75s, call it. I'm not going to be sold that this is ready to go. I got to see a candle close probably above that 75s, give it that whole quarter. But I do think it has a bit of resistance. You can see that if this is a retracement, you can see wicking up. This is that area that we're going to be looking for trims. But 725s, if we get a decisive move higher, I think 725s is a reasonable retracement. But you can see the uptrend building right here. And this probably runs a little bit further left actually, so it doesn't need to retrace down to here and trade back down one more time, and then that true neckline. Could be a true neckline developing right now. So we'll see. We'll see which way that wants to go. I like the setup though. BDRX. Let's look elsewhere. ASTS, nice channel. I was really tempted to add to that right there. Trying to hold this channel. It didn't give us that push higher though. So when we decisively break these 410s, and you can see drift was there with us yesterday. We never really got a true close. It messed around with us and closed at 410s twice. We thought we were getting ready for a push where that is just a low over here, and then we have 418s, 420 lows, top end of the channel. So we'll see. We'll see. But that ASTS, a nice push off that bottom end of the channel. SoFi, you can see off of this daily chart. The one reason we even took SoFi, we were just playing around with the neckline break. We said, hey, I think this is good enough for us to start the position. Let's try it. And then even added more on this day, added more on this day. Didn't do anything with the position yesterday, but now you can see it's trying to push higher. Strength right around that middle ground. We like taking these positions around this middle ground. And man, VKTX. These names that have strength, I need to be better at I could have just added, had orders off of 1450 and thought about adding some more. But man, this one is looking really good. If this really started building that U shape, I'd say alerts off of like 1530 as soon as it takes out day's high. I think this is going to be setting up to potentially test back up to this flat top. But you can see it's a strong name on your weekly chart. You got a strong name that's trading back down towards that middle ground. You can see the U shape is developing right here, and all it really did was retest these lows, or this previous high right there. Uh, Pretty good look, honestly. I'm a little upset that we got stopped. I probably could have just been patient with that, with everything that we're playing. But you never know. You just never know off that open. Sometimes you just try it and see if it works. BDRX, our bid is only at 52s now, so this is a little bit scary. 52s is our only bid, and light volume. But if it can hold 50s, when it takes out this wick high, I want to see that volume. It already showed the increase right here. I want to see if it takes out, let's say, over 1, 2, 3 candles from now, let's say, I want to see this volume exceed that 9.6K. And I think when we get that 75 break, that is when the volume is ready, but it's got to get there first. If it doesn't get there, then it don't mean anything. VKTX, I'm really upset. Man, what is up with these great setups that are just putting in ugly candles? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like that is the biggest bogus I dare myself to look over at BBIO and this is ripping. Good. Jeez, if this would have been at a 31 break today, I would have been so mad. I still am in awe that this ended up stopping us out on the button over here. We thought we had plenty of risk reward added to that. And it's, man, that is just, I just don't know what to say about that. Geo up to the 760s though. Geo, we're content that we're not looking for profit takes until we get up to this 8. Uh, we've been holding this name for some time now, and we're ready to get paid. So let's see if this setup right here, a nice green candle coming on in to start the day, can it give me a break of these 60s? It hasn't been able to do it, but let's see if it can do that today. BDRX, are we just going to need the trade back in before this is ready to go? Does it need to just trade sideways a little bit more? It's tough to say. Oh, I know why it's making that noise in my headset. My freaking mouse is about to die. Oh, that's sad to hear. VKTX, unbelievable. Look at that candle. That candle looks so good. That candle looks so good. Man, that's so just depressing that we're stopped out of this name. I would love to have that entry. Man, we should have just bought the knife, right? When I set the out, I took too much weight to the 15, where maybe I need to just flip it over to the daily chart, mark where my body candles are at. My body candles are right there off 64s. I could have said, okay, what's the next low off of that? 50s. Let's run a stop underneath these. Well, then it's just like, man, I might as well hold the name. God, it's so hard trying to get entries. Getting the dandy entry, like right here, this is just like, what's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? Right? But once you get the entry and it starts moving, it's so much easier to just sit back and just relax. Like Rivian is a great example. We have some ugly candles that have come in off of Rivian as well, and it's just like, well, we got the entry and we already had outs on the name. It was a lot easier for us to hold that position. But VKTX still pushing higher up to 22, so that is honestly a pretty decent look. BDRX, let's go take a look at this name. Let's go back over to this 15-minute. We have an open of the next candle, as indecision as it gets. Bids one lot off of 60s. So we'll see if BDRX can get going here. Let's take a look back at Chewy. We haven't got alerted on that yet. But trying to hold, setting up a bear flag. You can see increased volume. Is this going to give us one more flush down? Probably. Probably. I'm not going to make it sound like this is a beautiful entry. But it is Friday, and I want to just see some buying pressure come on over here. I mean, free cash flow positive. I just think that risk to reward right here is really good. It might need to just flush more. You can see very weak name on your weekly chart. Your daily chart's weak. You know, I honestly didn't think the earnings reports weren't terrible. They are bad. Not for my liking, but I didn't think they were really that bad. They still brought in free cash flow. Not too much dilution. The margins aren't great. Only, I believe, 22% margins. But I do think that it is possible to catch a retrace back up into these upper 20s, where you can see knife, retrace back in. You have a knife, let's see it retrace back in. You have a knife, retrace back in. Sets a bull flag, tries to give you a push. you know, even if I was just thinking about taking some outs into these wick lows over here, I think this is reasonable risk for reward for a pushback in to low 20s. So we'll see if that. Oh boy, BDRX. I just seen it. It was at 78. Did we get a fill there? Oh my God, 78. Is my order the market mover? Is my order the market mover? Don't tell me my order is the market mover right now. Oh boy, we have 26 lots on 80s. Let's see if we can get a fill here. Nope, no fill yet. Let's see if anything's getting chipped. One lot just got chipped. I don't know if it was taken off or it went through. Nope, no fill yet. Oh boy. Now we have this wick lower, just a wee bit lower. We gotta see some volume really start pushing this. If this wicks down in, gives up these 650s, we could be seeing this flush down in. You don't see me out here making waves. It's cause my freaking mouse is a little bit. I gotta leave my mouse on the charger for a little bit. Let me tune back, see if the chat said anything. Nobody. I mean, if you guys have anything else, you know, by all means, throw it in there. I'll take the time. But I'm gonna throw my mouse on the charger and just kind of just sit back for a second, watch this BDRX candle. So I mean, if it is a little bit boring, I apologize. But we're gonna sit here just like this. I just gotta charge my mouse up. I'm getting irritated on the noise that it's making. We'll scroll down just a little bit so that we can see some of these movers. So just looking, I'm just gonna say the ticker on the name. If you guys can see the watch list. SoFi being above 9, I'd say BAC, which is where my mouse is at right now. I'd say BAC over 29. I gotta see over 29.25s and I'll be bullish. But down the 28.50, I'm gonna be intrigued in adding some more. ATHM still trading in the wedge. PAGS hasn't filled our 925s to my knowledge yet. MSOS trading back down to that flat top at 925s. Having outs over 10s, we might think about reloading. But down near that 9 flat gap, I would feel a little bit more intrigued. But the flat top is at 925s. We'll see how that acts. VKTX, if that pulls back in the 15 flat, I might even just try and. We did get stopped out of it. Oh boy, BDRX putting in a little bit of a death candle here. You can see the uptick in volume is now red. Let's go look over. We only have one lot off 52s. 9 minutes left in this candle, so if it does trade down to this 50, I just want to see some wick buying pressure. That's all I want to see. But it gives up 950s. There we go. There we go. A little bit of buying coming in. We only have one lot on the ask here. And we have two lots. Now the bid's stacked up to 61s. You can see the volume just in those last 10 seconds. Still giving that uptick. So is it setting up for a break here? So, what about Apple? I'll go look over at Apple real quick. Apple, personally, I think Apple is overvalued, but it's a great company. You got to pay a premium for that company. You can see broke a trend line here. I don't know why we had that set in particular. I'd say Apple is trading as a weak name, but that doesn't mean that. I'd say you have clear out. So risk to reward on Apple, I'd give it a true out right there. But if it gives up that, I'd say gap at 165 is clear. And I'd even say potentially back down to the neckline. This is your flat top on the NASDAQ. Maybe that flat top on the NASDAQ is right here around this gap. I don't know. Personally, I'm not a fan of the big tech names. I think Apple is overvalued. When we were on this knife down, I was getting more interested down near this 110 gap over here is where it was. 110 gap. You can see that gap fill, but that would have been for a long. I would have been thinking very long term with that, where I would have at 110 I would have been expecting 96 gap. 96 gap, I would have truly built out a real long-term position where I wouldn't have cared about nothing. Now Apple, they have a large buyback. If they're executing large amounts of that buyback, they are continuing the buyback shares hand over fist. But I just think that they're buying back shares that are a little bit overpriced right now. So I'd actually want to see Apple down here near these 150s. I think this is an area where you can think more about some swing trades. Uh, but I'm really not a big fan of these large tech names. But Apple, they have great margins, they operate really well, and they have a really good return on invested capital. Those are businesses that you want to be in long term with. Me, I just think that the premium that Apple's trading at right now is just a little bit too rich for me. I have nothing against Apple. I think it's a very, very well-run company. But the decreasing revenues is a little bit concerning as well. I think it's 3 or 4 consecutive quarters of decreasing revenue. They got tough comps. I just don't want to overpay. There's got to be a difference where you differ the great company from the stock price, in my opinion. Now, if you're looking at swing trading this, I think that you could potentially be setting a higher low right here. I'd want to see this low continue the hold. Uh, let's see it push up, test this. If I was going to take a trade on this, I'd want to see 182 get filled, have some sell off, and then connect these lows right here. So if it catches a bid, fills 182s, gets some sell off, I'd say you can play this level for that third point of contact. Some would say this is the third point of contact, but I don't call it. I call this one point of contact until this 182 gap gets filled. That's what I would say about Apple. BDRX back down to these 650s. It looks like it pushed up to 78 still. Let's see what this size is looking like. Not much size. It looks like it is actually going to give up this level. So let's actually take this 80 order off. We're going to cancel this order. And we're going to probably try and set an out for this name. We'll just out underneath of 25s. We don't want to go too far against this. But I am a little bit skeptical. I do think it has a chance, but we're not going to be out of this name until it's kind of into that last fill that we had. So it would be a red trade for us. But I'll go into that 15-minute chart on Apple. I would just be a little bit wary with NASDAQ names just because I mean, it's easy to sit back and say that, oh yeah, obviously you can be bearish on the NASDAQ when it's putting in a candle like this. It's not the candle that I'm bearish about. It's where it rejected. You reject the 702 and your last retracement. You're rejecting the 702 right here. The 702 to me, anytime in BDRX, is alerting me right here. Let's just think about I'll address the NASDAQ one more time. Just let me get finished with this trade, and I just gotta see if this is gonna get bought up off this level or not. I don't like this candle rejecting that breakout price again on increased red volume. That's a little bit scary. So on this 4 minutes and 20 seconds left that we have on this candle, I gotta see this leave some sort of a wick. In my opinion, I gotta see it leave some sort of a wick. And there we go, holding 50s. That's what I like to see. Let's re-alert this underneath of 47s. We can see the bid is only at 45, so I mean this is going to trigger. Let's put that right underneath those 45s. Now the bid's holding 50s. We'll remove that alert back up to 48s. It's 48s. If that triggers us, we'll come back. So back to my NASDAQ. And maybe it doesn't look as bad. But I will say that anytime, and what's that CLSK? Me and Drift, I was just scrolling through the top gainers, and yesterday this was towards that top gainer because it gaps up and you have this percentage, and it had been a long time since I looked at this name, and all my chart was like, it was like this. 702, give up the level, and then I had it like this, rejecting this low, and then like this, testing back into this neckline. And you can see just having that 702 rejection on the map, you got to have in the back of your head that this is a possibility. It's a possibility that it can happen. And when you're dealing with these NASDAQ names, right now, the NASDAQ, extremely strong on the year. Just because it happened over there doesn't mean it's going to happen here. But you can see that we are starting to put this red candle. This trend line doesn't have too much more to give. Well, I mean, there's not too many fair, lenient ways to set this trend line. And for this to be putting in a red candle like this down to this range after a 702, it's got to be in the back of your head that this is a possibility. You crack this trend line, I'm not going to have any faith in this. Personally, I'm not. Can it catch a bid from there? Sure. But I'm going to be full out saying that we're going to crack support. We're going to get a retest. And my only clear level to the downside, you have a gap right here that can catch a small bid. But I would expect this flat top to be coming into play potentially. I know that might be hard for some people to see, but here's another one for you. Here's your full out retracement. What are we retracing right now? 1, 2. This could be the start. Even if this flat top right here catches a bid, if it rejects, I don't know how much. I mean, obviously I'd be a buyer down near the support, but if this is setting up a larger sort of picture, a tight descending channel, something like this, and I'm going to show you a big indicator, I would not be surprised to see this try and give out. I would not be surprised where you have a clean flat top. This is obviously probably not going to happen, but if it did, I would be like, yeah, I could see it. I could see it. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's got to be a possibility that on the long term, we are rejecting this last retracement. I don't think it would come into play. I think that this trend line would eventually hold, and we'd see it look more so like this, and try the wedge pattern in, and maybe eventually break out higher. This is what I would bet if I seen it trade down here. But it's got to be in the back of your head. Anytime you see that rejection of that last retracement, it is a possibility. Now, I'm going to go over to the almighty Tesla. Is there a catalyst for Tesla to push back down here? BDRX alerting. We'll come back and revisit Tesla because I'm a bear of Tesla. I think decreasing margins is a big no-go in an investment for me. And stock-based comp is a big no-no in investments for me, where Tesla's giving out, what, 500 mil a quarter in stock base. It's a big no-go for me. And I think decreasing margins and increased competitive space in a market where everybody is increasing the supply of vehicles, and the vehicles last how long? 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Increasing the supply, you already just go look at the CPI. What's your deflationary metrics right now? Cars. Cars, cars, cars. Look at the last 5, 10. Cars, 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 decreasing the supply. If Tesla traded down to $80 right now, do you think the NASDAQ could potentially give you a move down equal? It's possible. It's possible. So I would bet against it, but I'm saying it's possible. So anytime you're dealing with this area, it's just like, let's wait for some more information. I'm okay buying higher. If we ended up holding this and we put a candle up higher, I'm okay buying higher, but I got to see it. You know what I mean? So maybe I'm just ranting on, but, you know, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'm just on a rant. You know, when I get going, Drift will tell you, when I get going, I get going. But I'm saying that I like seeing increasing margins. I like seeing companies buy back shares. I like seeing low stock-based comp. If Tesla is the almighty golden child of this market, I think that even Tesla right now is setting a retracement. Everything's meeting up. These big tech names, they're meeting up. If Tesla cracks this trend line that it has, it's a very vertical trend line with a clear downtrend. You have a downtrend that catches a bid off of 100 flat, I would not be surprised to see Tesla have a tie-in, and I think it would be potentially 10, 15, 20 years. If it starts to break this downtrend, it could be 20 plus years before this high ever gets broken. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Now, obviously, I have personal dislikes of Tesla. You know, if you make money on it, great. So be it. Nothing against it. I think it's a great company. I think Elon Musk is a very good CEO to have. He's very, very intelligent. That is the plus side that I've say with it. But am I buying into it? That's where you got to be able to differ. Company from stock. Now, if I was looking at these large caps, I'd say Meta, 80+% margins, buying back a ton of shares. I like Meta. Google, high margins, buying back a ton of shares. I like Google. If I was going to pick big tech names, I would say Google and Meta would be my picks. Apple, at the right price. Nvidia, overvalued. I think it's hilarious to look at their last earnings report and to see them spend 18 bill in buying back company stock. I think they're buying back well overpriced stock, in my opinion. My opinion. Everything here is my opinion, guys. But I think them also increasing their buyback, if they're executing buybacks, I think it's a piss poor use of capital. I think they should keep driving that money that they're getting into their product, into their business. I don't think that they should be buying back company stock right now. If crackheads want to buy it up here, I would just keep issuing the crap out of shares. I would keep issuing the crap out of shares. But I will say that Nvidia taking out that high, maybe if it retraces back down to this gap, okay, 300, I can get on board with 300. But over 500, I can't. I just can't. Yes, they're forecasting out great. Yes, it was a massive quarter. Growth on every aspect, massive quarter. But that's where I got to be able to differ company from stock. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Got to be able to differ the two of them. You want to know what I'm interested in looking at for Q3? I'm interested in looking at oil. When oil was down here in the 60s, let's go to a daily chart. When oil was down here in the 60s, you know what oil was doing? They were buying back a ton of shares. They were still putting up 40 to 60% gross margins, operating over 20%. What are these Q3 and Q4 earnings going to look like when oil is elevated and potentially pushing up into the hundreds? You want to talk about something that, probably isn't done? Look at this retracement. The market up here at this 702 and 786, I wouldn't be surprised to see oil trading up here in these triple digits. What type of margins is oil going to put up? After down here in the 60s, they're putting up 60% margins, operating 20%. And increasing oil production. Whew. It's going to be interesting. And then the other one is I would like to see what airlines are looking like. I think Jets ETF is definitely on watch. We have a good till cancel off 1750. We're going to play that gap. I think there's a reasonable trend to potentially be looking at. If this trend cracks, I'm going to be looking for false breaks. But some of those airlines earnings in Q2 were pretty damn impressive, to say the least. And the other part about it is I think news follows movement, price movement. I'm keeping my eye on BDRX over here. I think that news follows movement. You didn't really start hearing the correlation of, airlines and gas or in oil together until this week when oil was finally up at 90s. You didn't hear any negative press on airlines when oil was up here in these upper 70s, $10 off of its low. You didn't hear it over here when it was testing 80s. No, you hear it when it's up here at 90s, actually into a little bit more of resistance, right? Well, let's go take a look at the Jets ETF. Oil, Jets. Oil, Jets. When do you start hearing the news follow it? This week. When do you start hearing the news follow it? This week. You get what I'm kind of getting at right here? And just looking at those Q2 earnings. Now, maybe Q2 is a good earnings date or earnings time. It's the summer months. Uh, but the earnings that they put up were fantastic. Yes, they sliced their price targets. Okay, add that on to the bad news. Just add it on to it. Slashing price targets when the prices are getting cut down. I mean, just looking at the Jets ETF, 20% down. Yeah, throw all the bad news that you can onto it as much as you can. Push that price down as far as you can. I'm all for it. But yeah, that's my rant. I'm gonna stop ranting about it because obviously, I do not know what the future is gonna hold. But the two industries that I'm gonna be looking at very enticingly in Q3 is oil and airlines. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that I can look at as well. I think banks. I think there's a lot of bad press following the banks, and I think the chart represents it. Uh, I would say that if you get another leg down on banks, I really like BAC down here in these mid 20s. Long term, that's going to be long term aspects, of course. And honestly, I'm always going to be interested in the China names. I think these China names are trading at very reasonable price levels, and I think BABA risks the reward right here off this trend line. I think is unmatched. Uh, they're already increasing operating efficiencies. They're cutting down on their expenses. They're increasing revenues. Yes, their population is declining. Sure, sure. I mean, you can look at uh, the forecast of the working class. I wouldn't look at China's population. I'd look at their working class. You didn't really start hearing about the declining of the population until this year, right? Well, they've been decreasing population for I think 4 years now, and it's actually anticipated to increase from 2023 to 2027. It's actually expected to increase. When do you start hearing about it? You start hearing about it in 2023. Music to my ears. I love looking at news and just shitting all over it. That's what I like about news. But what do I know? Alibaba, freaking last quarter, 3.1 billion in stock buybacks. Are they buying back fairly priced shares? I think that they are. The last 2 quarters, their average shares that they bought back. You know what prices they bought them back at? 88 and 88. The quarter before that was 74. You want to talk about buying back fairly priced stock with 16.1 billion left on their share buyback? You think they're executing these buybacks? I think so. And I think that they're buying back reasonably priced shares. Nvidia, when their stock was down, were they buying back stock? Maybe a little bit. But you know what are doing at the highs? They're buying back stock. And I think that that's a poor use of capital. I mean, I shouldn't use the comparison. Uh, I said I was going to stop ranting, so I'm going to stop ranting now. Let's focus up on some of the market. Uh, I don't know. Like I said, just a guy. PAGS. Let's see if this gave us our fill down here. 24 lows. So we did get a fill off those 25s. Didn't even need to watch it. Boom. Filled off 25s. On the money. Very nice, very nice. Let's look over at Chewy. Chewy still holding these 50s. That's what I like to see. Churning to the upside a little bit. That's what I like to see. ARM. Let's go take a look at the ARM IPO. Let's move this alert for when that cracks down. Excuse me. For when that cracks down 62s. GM gave up 40 or 34s. Okay. Okay, I can see you probably have some type of ascending channel that's being made. We like ascending channels. I think GM is a reasonable, you have the negative press with the news, with the strikes. Okay, I don't know if a deal was cracked. I think there was some murmurs of a deal getting made regarding that. Okay, maybe. I don't know. All I know is I think that this is a monster level on GM. And I think 3150 is going to get bought for me particularly, but also 32s. We were thinking about buying some yesterday off 33s. That's what we said on the live stream. It wicked down into it super quick. I didn't have my eyes on it. Had I had it alerted, there's your 33 test. Boom, bought up immediately. But we just were thinking 33s, just saying, hey, that's bottom end of the channel. Let's give it a go. That's all we really said about it. Looking elsewhere, Rivian underneath 24s, you can see the sort of descending channel that's making. I do got to go look over at BDRX. Is it going to be able to hold this level? We're going to focus all our attention to BDRX from here. We got 5 lots on 40s. We have nothing on the ask at 50s, so anybody's ball game right here. ASTS, I'd love to see this reclaim 4s. Really nice bounce off that trend line right there. We were really debating it. We even had an alert set underneath these 75s where we would have maybe just put our eyes on it and seen if it started wicking back up. But we didn't have our eyes on it. When we first looked back to it, it was up at the 89s already. And it's just like, can it retrace back down? And let's just put an alert back down near those 80s. SoFi holding 9s, I like it. PAGS right back into this level. I'd say, even though we did kind of buy that wick low right there, I'd say you have a descending channel. And honestly, trading below that neckline is not the greatest look. But if this retraces down, gets some good action off 915s, maybe even 9 flat, we can think about more ads to the name. MSOS, where do we wick down to? We said 25s is the flat top. Wick down damn close. But you can see that gap up from 9s. If this retraces back down, I think it's possible you meet up with this sort of short-term trend line at that gap. And I think we'll try and reload it if it gets there. Am I calling the top? It was 10 in the over 10 in the pre-market. Am I calling that as a top? Yeah, I'm not calling it yet. But you kind of do have a flat bottom break, tries the whole boom. We have no retest of it. Could I see this pull back into like 7s, maybe halfway of the move? If we look at this as a retracement, BDRX still holding. If we look at this as a retracement, you can see that 702 and that 786 meeting up down here. If this does fall south, you even have another gap meeting in right off of that 618. So a catalyst for this being a short-term top. Does it need to trade back in where we can buy a retracement, reload, the size that we want? Maybe. But I like the little setup here, and obviously a fantastic move. Can you say there was some luck involved building a long-term position over here? Maybe. And we're still holding, some decent size, over 50% of the position still. So if it wants to keep pushing, we're going to keep trimming it. I'd say this gap fill up to these 12s is reasonable, looking at it as a retracement. That is in that window of that 702 and that 786. So my next real retracement is really in off 1080s. So I think meeting in with kind of a low right there before it gives up the ghost. It's not a bad. I'm going to look at this as probably an exit window, or we might hold a little bit of a piece for a bigger move. But I would be more convinced that, yeah, a short-term top could be getting set in. Let's see if we can get a retracement back in if we get up here. VKTX still trying to hold this level. Holding 15s I think is big. This is a name I probably should have had some patience on. Gives up the ghost, and then once I see it reclaim 15s, that probably should have been the ad. But we'll see. Invax holding 8s. I still think negative on your daily, that we have to revisit this trend line. So even though we missed our reload on the name here, and we are out of the name, we stopped it. We stayed true to the stop that we wanted. Could have stopped it better, but we took really good profits on the name. If this pulls back into this trend line, I'd say this is going to be an ad for me. So we're looking for a rejection, pull back in, set a confirmed higher low, maybe a 750 hold, and we can think about it. What else we got? Looking at BDRX, still holding these 50s. I'm not giving up on this name just yet. As long as it's holding this 34, if we put a red engulfing down through, I probably, man, This one's a tough one. This one really is a tough one because it's not the most amount of volume, but you can see relative to what it's done from this period on, just super light volume, and now actually getting a little bit bullish. Early signs of some increased volume. It's nothing like over here. When this gets bullish, I'm looking for this type of movement where we can just have outs all the ways to the upside. That's what we're going to be looking for. Bob is still holding 50s. End phase. End phase isn't quite there yet, but potential neckline break that's setting up at 24.50. You don't see me. I didn't make it ways. I'd say Disney over 85s is potentially setting up to. Strength is getting very close. Off of giving out these lows, really nice candles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 green candles coming in, getting close to that positive break. I won't be laughing, or I won't be getting laughed at too much more if this can decisively hold above this flat bottom. Flat bottom break, retest, retest, now trying to flirt with it. So trying to discredit that flat top. But if it shows rejection, trades back down, you know, I'd honestly be looking for some sort of breakdown of this level where we could be seeing low 70s. Yesterday's candle only 130K volume. Today's candle already 700K. I'd say that is notable to address. Is this going to be able to go? It's going to be interesting to see. But this is what our eyes are going to be on. We've went over everything multiple times. If there's anything you guys want to see, throw it in the chat. Please do. And I will give my honest opinion. I'm not going to fluff it. I'm not going to tell you guys what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think. And it's my opinion. It's up to you guys to take the information I present and use it how you guys see fit. At the end of the day, you guys got to be your own traders. You guys got to be your own investors. Also, at the end of the day, you know, be careful. Like have an investing and trading strategy that works for you. What I'm doing right now might not work for you. It might not. But this is what I do, and this is what works for me, and I'm just trying my best to execute my plan that I have set. It's not anyone else's book, it's my book. So that's what I'll say about it. But just looking at the tape here on BDRX, still have one lot off these 50s. We have 5 lots off 40s. Is it going to be able to break? I don't know. Charles, GNS. Yes, we'll go take a look at GNS for you. Anytime, Charles. Anytime you want to see something. One thing I'd say, you're trading right around the 1 level. If it breaks down 1, is there going to be any increased shorting pressure? Flirting around that middle ground. We know we think. Just my opinion. I think the big players are around this middle ground, long and short. Keywords: long and short. If this breaks down 1, I would say stop loss is potentially underneath this 95 for continuation to the downside. I'd want to know where my positive break truly is. You get your positive break on these 2 candles right here. So just mapping the top of that candle, I'd say your longs truly got in around 81. So if the price tanks off of this 1 break and gets down to 81, are these same buyers that were here originally going to come back in? Looking at the 15-minute chart, I would say very light volume. This is the volume I want to see for a continuation. Is there any signs of this catching a bid? I'd say you probably have some sort of a downtrend. I don't know how accurate I would be able to mark that, but I would want to see this low hold and a 104 break. After a 104 break, you have your flat bottom. Boom. You see how it's hold, flat bottom, reject, reject. It's already rejected it twice. I'd say 107 is where you could potentially start seeing some volume increase. So in this window is the window I'd want to have alerts on for this potential break over 110. If you break over 110, is it a retracement? So you can see that 109, that 110 is a retracement. I'd be looking for a move up to 120s. This is where my area would be for first outs, in my opinion. Now, we do have a flat top, so a catalyst to get up there. If we test up to 130s, I'd be pretty bullish because it's able to show you movement through these retracements. Now, even if it rejects, let's say you push up and you reject all the ways down right here, I would say it's possible that we're just going to trade in this range, and then your true break on the name is going to be 130, which is what we kind of said over here. If it can get over 130, we like it. Where over 130, we look at it, you can see that 133 is that first retracement. Over 130 could easily give you a move up to 2, which at 2, you gap down, so you have the start of the gap meeting at that 702 and clear profit takes. If you're able to get through those retracements, you know, it might have to trade down. There's probably would be some trading action that could give you a trend line potentially. If that trend line eventually holds, you could have a break over top of this high. This is all bull case scenario, by the way, where if you get over top of that high, you're looking at this retracement where that high right there is your first retracement. You could just respect these outs all the ways to the upside, where you have a flat bottom break here at your 5. It tested up to 5 before we crack down. So multiple different areas, but if I had to bet, now this is just my opinion, Charles, I got to check in on BDRX. Still holding 650s. Okay. I only look at this as 2 points of contact. Would a breakdown of this one make sense and be able to hold down into this price where you have a gap, you have sort of a neckline break, you set a short-term higher low, but on your neckline break right here, this is your early entry before strength. If you were just watching this every single day and you're saying, hey, we're starting to catch some volume, this candle puts it on the map. Let's watch it. Okay, it's holding. If we break over top of that wick high, we're going to punch in. Boom. That's your early entry. As you are getting ready for that positive strength, what transpires? Boom, boom. Increased volume, you get that move. This trend line, you're off of this trend line, and when it gives it up, boom. You're just kind of trading sideways on super light volume. So would it make sense for this to have to trade back down near this neckline down here? Possible, where this could be a buying window to buy against strength, where you also have a trend line potentially meeting in there. So that's your bear case scenario and your bull case scenario. I'd say you need more information to see which way it's going to transpire. Over 130, bullish. Under 1, potentially setting up for a crackdown into, at the worst case scenario, I would start with this gap at 64s. If there's no gap fill buying and there's no trend line buying on the name, you could easily see this crack down and honestly maybe even revisit down here. Maybe ends up doing a share split where anytime you see a share split, it's going to give you a move probably underneath of that low. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen. I would say down here in this range would be an area I could potentially think about going in against strength, because as it knifes down to that area, your strength is going to follow it. Your strength is going to follow it down, but it's going to try to build out a base, and then as it's kind of building out that base right around this trend line, that is where your early entries for a potential positive break, a reclaim of positive, where if this traded back down here and eventually this ended up being a neckline break, could end up being a trend for a potential channel. You know, am I going to say that this is how it's going to transpire? I have no clue. I don't have a crystal ball. But there's a couple scenarios there where, you know, a bear case can also turn into a bull case. But if it wanted to go, it's going to start at that 130 break. So until it breaks 130, I really don't think you're missing out on anything just yet. I actually think that you probably have more downside risk instead. But if that 130 break comes in, I'm okay buying it at a higher price. I'm okay buying it at a higher price when I have more conviction of a higher move. And I'm okay buying it at a lower price if I can see good buying pressure, good action off of one, your initial positive break, and potentially your neckline down here. So that's what I would say about GNS. But looking at BDRX, and still just hovering right around this range at 650. We're going to be waiting for this one all day probably. Volume is still decreasing, not too much selling pressure, not too much buying pressure. Baba coming on in back down to the support level, tries to catch a bid off these 20s and actually showing these couple wicks, rejecting these lows for right now. Wick into these lows. You can see just mapping out the body candles and these wicks right here. You can see the wick pressure coming in there. So is it going to be able to hold 87s and be able to break back over 87.50? That's what I want to find out. Let's look back over at Chewy. I see Rivian reclaim 24s, discrediting that downtrend, that descending channel that we had, and you can see the wick buying pressure coming in off of all these wick highs. That is what I would really want to see. So when it was sitting down there as a red engulfing, a nice buying pressure coming in off of those middles. 2360 is that first level. So not a bad candle, even though it's red on the day. I think there's positives to look at it. Um, arm down to 64. You gap up. It's holding above that gap for right now. Is it going to be able to wick down to 62s? ASTS still continuing the churn. Is it going to be able to test up to these 4s today? Just might. DVN trying to set a higher low right here, but reject. You can see when it gives it up on this first candle, you can see we're just rejecting that sort of flat bottom break right there. DVN, I would want to say that it's going to come on down, and I think we are going to put some orders in off this 49.50. I think with the oil as strong as it is, I like Devon. I think their management did a great job. Now they got a lot of pushback for decreasing this dividend. You look at the dividend, $1.27. They were increasing it every single quarter. Increase. When oil was very high, they're increasing that dividend every quarter, even up to 155 up near these highs. Now they noticed, they realized that, hey, this dividend is not something that we can really support. So 135 is the first decrease. Then they decrease it down to 89 cents. Obviously, the price kept following it, but it is what they needed to do. It's what they needed to do. I applaud the management team in doing this. It's not an easy thing to do, and normally the stock price is going to get hammered from it. And now they go from 89 to 72. It's what they needed to do. They couldn't afford it. Uh, and now they're down to 49 cents. Is it reasonable to believe that earnings of $1.18 can support a 49-cent dividend when they can use more of that cash flow to buy back shares? They're not using that cash flow to buy back shares as much up here. They're using it to pay dividends. Now, as the price comes back in where they feel more reasonably priced as a company, now they're decreasing that dividend and increasing the amount of shares that they're buying back. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Um, and just looking at the EPS, it's going to be interesting to see some of these oil earnings where, maybe this Q3 you don't see too much of that jump in their earnings because only part of the quarter has this elevated oil price. But Q4, if we see oil continue the trend like we think it's possible, where I would not be surprised to see oil pushing up into these retracements up here in the triple-digit oil. I think some of the oil earnings are going to be monstrous, and I think you're going to see increased margins, and I think you're going to see more buybacks, and I think you're also going to see increases in dividends. And I think Devon is a perfect example of a company where a lot of oil is already up here near this gap. And I'm not saying that this adds any credibility to the long. But a lot of oil is already up here. A lot of oil is already testing this low. Boom, breaks it down, retest. A lot of oil is already up in this window. And Devin to be putting in this type of trend line right here, I'm not going to shy away from adding into Devin into these 49s. So if it breaks down 50s, you know, it got into the 49s briefly today, but if it breaks down 50s, we're going to be buying this name. If it cracks lower, you know, I have enough reason to believe that oil names are going to prosper in these Q3 and Q4. In my opinion, that's my humble opinion. Looking at BDRX, still sitting at 650s. I think it's into an area where we should probably have an alert. We keep looking away from it, and I think it's reasonable to say that, yeah, we should probably have an alert on the name. And let's put it right off those 41s right there. But, you know, we should be getting an open to the next candle. Super light volume. So if the selling can hold off and the buyers can come on in, let's see if we can get a true 675 break right here. You can see it. You can see it. Doesn't need to test back down before it really can catch a bid, though. That's all we're going to be worried about. So if we end up getting stopped out, we could revisit this off of this trend line. I'm just not sure yet. Looking at some top movers, we have it alerted here. And keep it zoomed in so you can see this price action. Let's see the open of this next candle. Top movers on the day is EU, very light volume name, but a name that I could definitely see catching a bid. It might need to trade back down to this previous high first, though. But strong name on your daily and weekly. TTOO. Holding that low, actually breaking the downtrend that we had set. Let's see what this looks like. Is it a perfectly set downtrend? Probably not. Probably not. I would actually say it's probably trading inside this downtrend still. As you can see, it's sort of rejecting it just briefly. BDRX sitting at 644s. It's a wide spread though. We got a 15-cent spread, so anybody's game to really just claim that and go away with it. GM, you can see tested top end of the channel. Is it going to be able to break this channel? I don't know, but if it did, I think up here in these 35s to 36 is going to be areas for trims. Geo still holding 50s. That's what we like to see. SoFi holding 9s. Are we gonna? Is it setting up a flat top here? I'd say trying to set up a flat top. Clearly some selling pressure off those middle teens. VKTX wicking back in down towards this trend line. Baba down to these 87s. Did we get 87s filled there? Red engulfing, acting like it wants to push down lower. I don't know how much more this can really give up. We have this low down right here. Is it going to be able to hold that price? I really don't know. But I would have actually expected Alibaba to be green today, personally. That goes to show maybe I have some emotions tied in with the name. It's possible. But I think you're getting fair value on this sort of trend line right here. We'll see if it can hold or not. Maybe it can't. Maybe it can't. But I think you're decisively off of this downtrend. I think it's reasonable to think that, yeah, you can get this sort of view build where all it would take is a 96 break, and you're going to know, boom, you're going to see a freaking, you're going to see some buying come in if 96 is break on Baba, in my opinion. But we'll see. We will see. BDRX. Let's go take a look at the tape for BDRX. I mean, it's going to be pretty boring. We've pretty much done the damage that we needed to do today. I don't think there's really anything else that we can address. except for this BDRX. Is this BDRX going to be able to hold? Wait, there's such light volume coming in over the last couple minutes that, I mean, we don't even have the open of the next candle yet. Rivian turned back green. So gaps up, retraces back into the gap, tries to hold it, sets this sort of channel. Now volume pushing it through that channel. Is it just setting up this flat top here at 24.25, give or take? You can see the catalyst of a channel, or potentially a test of the top end of the channel. Are we going to keep following this sort of ascending sort of channel that it has going? We will see. We will see. Take a look back over at CHWY. CHWY sitting up at 69, so a nice slow churn on the name. That's a new position. Buying the knife is always a scary thing to do. So we have it alerted underneath that. We have no stop on the name. But underneath this set an all-time low actually today. Did it set an all-time low? Sure did. Sure did set an all-time low today on CHWY. Is it too much to ask for a retrace up in the 23s? Man, this setup right here just looks good. It just looks good. Some setups just look good in my opinion. I think this BDRX is one of them. I don't know anything about the company. Let's take this time to go take a look at some stuff on the company. Let's at least get an understanding of what the float looks like. BDRX. I mean, the float is 220K float. Is this something that can get going? Definitely. Oh, we better make sure our fantasy lineup is set for today. In the first week of playoffs, I've made more transactions this week than I have in the last 3 months. I am scrapping to try and get a win this week in fantasy baseball. I don't know if that's anything any of y'all would care about, but it is something that I care about. Yeah, boring, boring, boring. Boring, boring. BDRX giving up these 30s for right now. We'll see if this is going to start flushing on us. We'll give it a chance. We'll give it a chance.
light volume coming in right there. We'll see if this is what can trigger. Oh boy, volume's picking up. We're hovering over this sell button right now. See if some wick buying can come in here and just wick us back in. I'd say you're right into the support level. Alright, down the 21s. Let's go ahead and get this stop. We'll give it under 6s. Go 595s. We're gonna give this a chance. A little bit of size on the bid here though. I'm not giving up on this name just yet. All it would take is a whole of these 30s and this still has a chance. I think it's possible. It maybe has some sort of trend line. I'm not going to say it's perfect. It could be giving up that trend line right now. But I'd be more convinced on a breakdown of 6 that that's the case. 52 lots off 622s though. Aside from that, I mean, pretty boring. I think we're going to stay true to a 595 out on this name. Looking at the daily, it is a little bit indecision, but you have a gap up from these 615s. It might just need the trade down to that. It might just need the trade down to that level. But honestly, I could see my stop getting taken out and then getting some increased movement to the upside. We haven't talked much about ARM, but I will say that we're still just holding it. I mean, we already sold this. We went right in front of 63s. Boom, 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 boom. 4 fills with the last one being right at 66. We were on the ask at 70s, just never got the fill. If we would have got that 70 fills, we probably would have bought the gap. And might have thought about adding some more down into this window right here. This is the window I'm looking for. So if you can see top end of the channel, it respected it kind of, but boom, respected it there. If it pushes a little bit higher, is this going to set up some sort of a wave pattern where you got a 1, 2, 3, 4? That fourth wave pushing up to that bottom right there. I'd say it has some resistance at 65s where that fifth wave coming back on into our buy window. That's what we're going to be looking for. Pretty boring. Looking at some top movement for today. Let's look at some top losers. Top. PWM. Trading off of the level. Trading at the lows, actually. I still think down here could catch a bid. You have really nice volume on these two candles. Boom, boom. DocuSign. This is going to be one that I think we're going to play support on. But trading right at a gap fill today, honestly. Actually, almost direct contact with that gap. Baba surprisingly still trying to hold this level. DFS setting up the flat bottom. If that flat bottom breaks, boom, right down to the gap. You're going to see this right down to it. Is there some sort of trend line that can hold? Potentially. BDRX up to 630s. I mean, there's still some positives that we can latch on to. It's not all bad. It's not all bad. But testing into that flat top is trying to hold as of right now. So we'll give it a chance to hold. PAGS holding above 25s. Go look over at CHWY. CHWY wicking back down into those 50s. ATHM is trying to catch a small bid. I mean, you can see, I mean, even off of this wedge pattern, you have a clear trend that's trying to hold. So that is a good sign when you're getting secondary trends. You have the trend line, the downtrend, which is a bigger wedge pattern. You have the downtrend and the trend line holding another wedge pattern. Looking at arm, is this gonna have the pressure? I think you could see this really push into that 65, give a false break of the 65. It's gonna come in right here, it looks like. But test, wick back in, and see a flush, transpire, and boom. Hopefully. I don't know if I'd bet for that. Well, it doesn't look like we have too much really going on. A lot of stuff just kind of trading in near the levels. Is Alibaba going to fill 87s? If it does, we'll take the fill off of it and try it. If it doesn't, so be it. I think there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of trying to hold some levels right now, and there's not really too much price action going. I'd say this BDRX, if I had to bet, off of this look, rejecting that sort of flat top area, I think it's possible that it's probably just building this, and we are going to need to come on back down to this trend line, which is going to be a cold, hard truth that I'm going to have to make a judgment call with whether I try to execute this play or not. You know, even running it down to underneath of that 6 out, we think that this does have a chance, and you can see at 702 and right in around this area. I think if this pulled back in down over here over the course of leading in over to Monday, that could be the case. We can see this 382 trying to hold. You know, maybe we just give it an out underneath of like 605. But then it's like, is 6 is gonna hold? Oh boy, decisions. How do I get myself into these names? Honestly, I like the setup. I think the setup looks good. When it was a full green engulfing candle, it's like, why was there no buying to push this up higher where you have a nice flat top up here at 8? Is this going to be able to catch the bid up there, though? It's definitely something that can crack on us, though. Where you can see this first retracement down. It's setting up your retracements to the downside pretty well, honestly. Where your downside pressure at 140s is probably the downside push. Oh man. Am I gonna have the cojones? But it doesn't look like we have anyone watching. Drift might be hanging around, or maybe Edgar. But I think it is gonna be time for us to call the live stream. And I think I'm gonna go get some food and refill some coffee, let the dogs outside, you know. But we will readdress this back on Monday. I appreciate everyone who tuned in for the stream. Edgar, it was nice to have you back. Charles, it was good to have you here. Drift, I'm sure your name's always worth mentioning. I'm sure you tuned in a little bit. And if you didn't, you know, you probably end up watching a little bit of this stream on your own time. If not, you know, I'm not holding it against you. But that's going to call it for the live stream. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. And we will see you guys in the next one on Monday.